What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video here on the channel, and today we're going to be talking about Facebook. Happy Easter, by the way. I almost forgot to say that for some reason, but we'll be talking about Facebook, which is kind of like boomerland at this point. One of the biggest technology companies and one of the biggest websites on the planet, Facebook, over the last 2 decades has grown from a startup in a college dorm room to one of the leaders of Silicon Valley. They have a pretty massive influence over society, politics, pretty much anything you can imagine just because of the amount of users that they have. But unfortunately, a massive data breach just happened again, and by again, I mean this is another huge one, okay? Data breaches, they happen all the time, in all reality. Pretty much there's no website that really is 100% safe from having something like this happen, but when these things on this scale happen so often, with your website, with your company, at a certain point you have to kind of look inward and try and find some way to combat it. Before we get any further into the video, I just want to say that nearly half of you watching have yet to subscribe. I try to post multiple videos per day to keep you entertained, so consider leaving a like to help support and subscribe with notifications on so you never miss anything. Also, all of my socials are on the screen right now, so consider leaving a follow on these for more awesome content, and also consider grabbing a shirt if you're really awesome. Now to the rest of the video. Facebook obviously caught a lot of flack over the whole Cambridge Analytica scandal, which I've talked about countless times here on the channel, basically where third-party company was able to pull tens of millions of users' data without their consent, which was then later used for political ad targeting and other political purposes. But the scope of this one is much more massive than Cambridge Analytica. When it comes down to the amount of people affected by this one honestly kind of looks like Mount Everest compared to like a small hill in your backyard. I mean, we're talking about upwards of 500 million with a B accounts being targeted in this data breach. Now, first, I want to go ahead and tell you why this is so important, okay? So the amount of data that just leaked from Facebook is absolutely absurd. Like I said, 500 million accounts plus. But we're talking about some pretty insane information that has become publicly available. We're not just talking about like your name and your Facebook link. According to Business Insider, there's information from 106 different countries around the world, which includes phone numbers, Facebook IDs, full names, your geographical location, birth dates, and email addresses. So we're talking about some pretty personal information. I mean, sure, it's not your social security number or anything crazy, but this is still information that could be used in some pretty nefarious purposes. Now, once again, you're probably sitting here like, well, Optimus, what's the big deal with something like this? Well, with this information being leaked, there's several different things that can be done with this. This was actually all found apparently on a website frequented by hackers and people who pull data, use data, and things like that. So when a massive data breach like this happens and hundreds of millions of people's public accounts and their information and stuff become public, hackers can begin to use that for a couple different purposes. One massive one that often happens is, well, a lot of the times in these data breaches, like passwords and things get leaked. And then, you know, people often use the same password, which is definitely recommended against. You're supposed to use different unique passwords for everything. But a lot of people, you know, password 123, they put that in, and that's their go-to for everything. And when things like this get leaked, it can make it very easy to access other accounts. And with this amount of information, the accounts affected could be some pretty crazy things. I mean, people don't really think about this being a possibility, but there's a good chance that a decently experienced hacker, if they have your full name, they have a password, they have a location, email address, and a phone number, we're talking about the possibility of accessing bank accounts, financial accounts, work accounts, school accounts, pretty much anything that they really want. The risk is definitely a lot higher if you're using the same password across accounts. This is why they definitely recommend, if you notice an account breach or something like that, that you're supposed to like change your password immediately and things like that, so people can't just readily find this information or whatever on one of these hacking forums and basically just start logging in. Now, the thing is that I think people don't really understand is data is like gold on the internet. I mean, 500 million Facebook accounts is worth a pretty penny. And I mean, when you think about it, right, these accounts, they're not being sold for 50 bucks a piece. No one's buying a Facebook data info for 50 bucks. But there are people out there who will buy, you know, 5 people's data, I guess, for 5 bucks. So, I mean, if you think about the scope of this, if they were to sell, you know, one individual's full data for $1, they have $500 million sitting here. Now, a lot of the times, you know, the prices definitely vary depending on the information. This is a pretty decent amount of info, though. And even companies that are trying to advertise through annoying purposes like robocalls, spam calls, and things like that, oftentimes will buy these large lists of data. Because if you think about it, right, like all of the information like in this right here, your phone number, your full name, your location, your birthday, those are all automatically things that can be used to target you with ads. If you live in Los Angeles, California, right, and you're a 45-year-old man, they can kind of through the science of demographics try to market things to you, and this definitely happens. I mean, I don't know how many people use like data monitoring services, but like I noticed, I don't know, 8-9 months ago, there was like some sort of website breach and my phone number and one of my old emails ended up leaking. And the next thing I know, I'm getting robocalls like every other day from just random places, from Canada, Russia, the United Kingdom, from places being spoofed in the United States. And I don't really think things like that are a coincidence, man. I mean, it's pretty easy to access information like this, especially when they get leaked onto websites like this. Now, the good news in this story, I guess, if there is any good news in this story, is that the information appears to be several years old. Now, Facebook didn't necessarily, rush to give us a timeline on when this data was collected and when this information was actually recent, but when you really think about it, how many people change their Facebook information? And I mean, a lot of these things, even if it is years old, it really doesn't necessarily change the fact that they can still use this information in different ways. I mean, if they, once again, like if they have your full name and you've lived in the same place for 7 years and you've kept the same phone number, it doesn't really matter how old this data was, right? Like it's still your personal information. It's still been leaked. So I guess for people who actually update their information and keep their Facebook profiles updated, this might not necessarily be an issue. It doesn't appear that passwords, at least from the article that I'm reading, were leaked. So I guess that's a good thing, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're 100% safe. I mean, even then, there's ways to brute force passwords. There's, ways to reset people's passwords if you especially don't have two-factor authentication. Now, once again, this is not the first time that Facebook has dealt with something like this, and this is definitely like a very large breach in comparison to most data breaches. I mean, this is honestly a pretty significant portion of the world population in all reality, but once again, back in 2018, there was the big Cambridge Analytica thing. They had to actually disable a feature that allowed users to search for one another with phone numbers after that entire scandal had happened. And even then, that wasn't even the last massive, data breach that Facebook has struggled with. Back in December of 2019, a database was found with the names, phone numbers, and unique user IDs of more than 267 million people on Facebook, which were nearly all US-based. And this was information easily accessible on the open internet. You didn't even have to go to like the dark web or anything like that and browse some random website. This was a database that could be readily found with a fucking search engine like Google, okay? So back in 2019, basically all the users in the US got their shit leaked, and then now there's another massive breach. So my advice for you, if your information is years old and you use Facebook and things like that, I would be changing what you can. I mean, some of this stuff isn't something that you can really hide or anything. I mean, like your full name, you can't really change that. That's your name. You can't really change your birth date, right? Like, you still came out of the womb on a certain day. But, like, when it comes down to the things that aren't so necessary, I think usually it's best to just, not actually put that out there. Now, Facebook has actually come out and talked about this issue. They said that the leak was actually pretty old, once again, years old this information is at least, and it actually stemmed from a problem that had been fixed in 2019. So that means that most likely, at this rate, the breach happened before 2020, sometime in 2019, 2018, something like that. But even then, this is still important. I mean, I understand, obviously, once again, no website or person can be 100% secure online, but these are the types of issues, man, that, like, when you're a company like Facebook, this can't be happening every single year. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't be letting this shit happen every single year. I mean, they need to spend some money upgrading security or something, because, like, it's honestly unacceptable that their website has such piss-poor security that people are just every year pulling hundreds of millions of users' accounts or finding a new loophole to exploit, right? Like, something has to be done about that. Obviously, Facebook has the money to fund something to protect themselves, so I guess we'll see where the company takes this from here, but definitely something to be aware of. If you did enjoy the video, that's going to be it, of course. If you did enjoy the video, though, make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're brand new around here on the channel, follow me over on Twitter and Twitch at @SubToOptimus. Make sure to check out Shop Opti down below, and until my next video, guys, this is Optimus. Well, honestly, Facebook's kind of shit, and sign out.